The last paper presented, it's a pelvic floor muscle displacement during jumps in continent and incontinent women, an exploratory pilot study by Dr. Moser.
Hello, everybody. So, I have nothing to disclose. Today, the pelvic floor muscle displacement during running that potentially provoke urinary leakage is increasingly explored. Ultrasound and magnetic resonance imaging is applicable to measure PFM displacement during involuntary contractions and reflexive tasks like coughing. During a voluntary PFM contraction, cranioventral elevation and with coughing a caudal dorsal descent of the PFMs has been demonstrated. This study investigated PFM displacement during jumps by means of an electromagnetic tracking system, and 50 women with stress urinary incontinence and continent women were tested during drop jumps and counter-movement jumps. The investigations concerning PFM displacement during vertical jumps for continent and incontinent women showed no significant differences between the groups. Here you see the landing point. So 0 was set at the landing for the landing point, and in blue you see the mean values from the stress urinary incontinent women, and the red one are the continent women. And you see that it goes caudal displacement. You see here millimeters, and it goes. Here is 0, and so it goes about the standard deviation from 25 till down -10. So this to see a little bit how much it is for you. And this is the force plate that was the body weight force. So you see the women were in the air, and then there was a landing, and it was up to 3 to 4 body weight force. And the jump was down here from a 21 centimeter step, and this is the first landing. Then the takeoff, you see after takeoff, the pelvic floor muscles is making a caudal displacement. Then interesting is the second landing, because you see here the tendency from the pelvic floor muscle displacement is going cranial. And that was interesting because in the studying from running, during the heel strike, also the pelvic floor muscle displacement went cranial. Then we have the takeoff from the counter-movement jump. You see here the counter-movement jump, you stand, you bend the knees, you jump up, and you land again. So the takeoff is the same, likely the same that during drop jump, so it goes down. And during the landing, it's also the tendency that the pelvic floor during landing goes cranial. That was interesting because our hypothesis was that it will go down, caudal, that it gives a thread shortening cycle. But here we see this one. In this picture you see the 50 women, and each woman did 3 jumps, and so it's the mean of 3 jumps. So each line you see is 1 woman, and this one is the mean from the women, also from the landing, from the counter movement jump. So this study describes kinematic properties during vertical jumps. The interest was to identify involuntary reflectory muscle action forms, like isometric, concentric, eccentric, concentric. And the conclusion is jumping stimuli inducing involuntary PFM displacement should be used for future investigations to consider a beneficial effect concerning continence. Thank you.
Any question?
Thanks for a nice presentation. I have a question about your measure of pelvic floor muscle displacement. So where was your sensor, and how did you know that it was actually measuring what the pelvic floor was doing relative to it free-floating within the body?
Yes. I haven't mentioned the method, sorry. That a sensor was applied to a pelvic vaginal probe, and the referential sensor was fixed to the sacrum.
So the probe itself was fixed to the sacrum, or you were looking at the motion of the probe relative to what the sacrum?
Relative, because you need to know where is it. You need to know if it gives a displacement from
relative to bony.
Yeah, okay. To the pelvis.
So how do you know that the sensor that was in the vagina was actually measuring what the pelvic floor muscle position was relative to what the sensor position was?
Yes, it measures the sensor position, which we suppose that the vaginal probe is moving similar to the pelvic floor.
And maybe you had it in your study, and I didn't see it on the slide, the age range of the participants.
Yes. The age was, the mean age for continent was 39.3, and for the stress urinary incontinent women was 45.8, so it was a significant difference.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Could you please elaborate on the last sentence, that jumping stimuli inducing involuntary pelvic muscle displacement should be used for future investigations to consider a beneficial effect? What do you mean by that there should be a beneficial effect by jumping, or what?
Yes, I think maybe jumps included in a rehabilitation training could be beneficial for the rehabilitation of the pelvic floor muscles.
But I think we have at least 20 studies showing that high impact activities is causing incontinence.
Yes, but there are also possibilities and studies that say it may also be a strengthening factor. And if women want to do leisures and sport, often you need to jump, so it must also be a preparation for the women that they can again do their.
But I think it's a very strange jump from this, and to say that this could be used in rehabilitation, because we know that they are leaking, and it's like saying, well, you're leaking during a cough, so please cough more.
Yes, it's. I say the future investigations need to be done, but it also has to be visioned that maybe it can be a beneficial effect.
Okay.
Any other question? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.